I hope that everyone has had a better Monday than I have. Not that it's been a bad day, it's just been ongoing and constant and just stress, stress, stress. But I took this day and its stress knowing that in the future, what I am bringing to myself will be so much better than the past, right? I have made sure to close doors where any, old energy, stagnant energy, denser energy from my past, I have permanently closed that door now pretty much. Um, I am left with, rebuilding and restructuring and rejuvenating, my life. Um, I know that most of the time I get on here and I am, sharing my card readings, my spiritual stuff, and everything is spiritual no matter what we think, no matter, what our belief system is. We all have higher and lower energies, and we are all connected. We are all, human beings, right? Each and every one of us does have a soul, and each and every one of us goes through our own, situations and paths and challenges and hardships. Some of us, 144 on the timer when I looked up, some of us have, a lifetime. We are born into that dissonance, right? We are born into those denser energies, right? And at the time we don't know it, and we grow and we learn and we are programmed, and we grow and we learn and we are programmed over and over again. But regardless, 211 and 212 on the timer, regardless, we are here to, experience what our soul has, signed up in order to experience, right? All of those challenges, all of that density, all of that darkness, all of that pain, is there, 234 on the timer. It is there for our benefit, right? It is there to help us to learn and grow, right? The processes that I have been going through the past 2 years are the most challenging ones that I have experienced yet in my life, right? And I have been here quite a few decades. This ain't, my first rodeo. And, honestly, my life is just beginning, right? Each and every day we wake up with a brand new life, a brand new choice. Well, today I woke up and decided that I was done with the old. I was done with all of the lies and the deception that I have been living with, that have been constantly nagging at me and, keeping my head filled with worry and doubt and, fear, even, right? And regardless, we all have our path. We all have our value. We each and every one are created and are living our God experiences, right? Our soul experiences. Um, no matter who we are, whether we are, the highest paid or, the least, right? Not paid, homeless, abandoned, rejected, right? We have all of that, right? And hopefully that we as humans, can learn to appreciate and accept, not only ourselves and our, indiscrepancies, but others and theirs, right? Because at the end of the day, each and every one of us, we all, you know, have flesh and bone. We all have two legs, two arms, and we all put our pants on, most typically one leg at a time, right? And we each and every one have to go take a poo or a pee, and every single one of us has body stuff that is so gross, and you're like, ugh, stinky ass shit, right? no matter, we are human. We are in this vessel and for a greater purpose, 505, than, what we may have realized or recognized, right? And within each and every trial that we go through, we have the opportunity to grow stronger and more competent, in our trials and in tribulations, right? We have the opportunity to grow and to, you know, take these lessons and take these, shortcomings or, these blessings in disguise, right? Because no matter what it is that we experience in each moment, we can choose grace. In each moment, we can choose, to live in our fullest self rather than our impulsive, lower selves, right? Regardless. And now with all the 606 on the timer, and now with all the, you know, influx of, and outpouring of negativity that we have around the world globally, it is even more important to stand in your truth and to be able to speak your truth, right? And to be able to see, and discern, souls which are worthy of your, companionship and attention, and those that are not, right? So, we have that choice within us, right? And we can choose, that devil on on our shoulder or the angel on our shoulder. It is our choice. It is always our choice in which we want to uh, manifest in, what do we want to focus on, right? What is it that you want to bring in? In the past, I may have been and acted more as a victim, not realizing my own power, right? I had been indoctrinated, programmed from birth, even from conception, to be less than, to be and live in fear, right? And to, you know, um, live in fear of what others would think of me and my values and, who I am at the core, right? Regardless, no matter what, creator, creation, the Yeshua, the Christ Jesus, you know, um, what is it? First Corinthians 13:13. Faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these. Hello, the greatest of these is love. We have to always, it's 8:11 on the timer. We have to always return to love, right? Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to you. Whatever, as above, so below, as within, so without. So whatever we are thinking, imagining, feeling, our thoughts and our feelings help to create our, environment. They help to create, our world, right? That all starts from within, right? Living in joy in that space of positivity and productivity and, reciprocation of love, joy, abundance, and bliss, that can only come, from within. And if you're looking anywhere else besides within, you've got it all backwards. 909, 911. Emergency. Hello. Guys, so much love, abundance, 911 on the timer. So much love, abundance, joy, pleasure. My soul is overflowing, not only for myself, but for you, so that we can leave these trappings behind, so that we can live in this love, in abundance, in a joyful state, rejuvenating, replenishing, renewing. Each and every day is a renewal. And live in the knowing that you create your reality by how you think and feel. And know that it's